Lurking, in general, is understood as actions players operating away from the pack are taking. It can take various shapes and fulfills very different roles in a T round, depending both on the micro of the areas and the macro of the round. The two broad categories we will use are lurks operating either close to the pack or far from the pack. This can obviously combine at different timers of the round, and there are ways to play situations rather than strict identities to conform to, obviously. I chose to use player names only to categorize the lurks. They are not necessarily relevant or important, but usually they reflect a playstyle that can be observed in demos from said players. First, lurks in direct spatial relation to the pack, meaning close. First, what types of lurks, what close lurks exist. So, when attacking a bomb site in a finisher with a pack lurk formation, a 3-1, a 4-1, situations must be understood contextually, and the types of lurk activity should be selected according to multiple factors. So, the first identity, I will call it BlameF. BlameF, you play after the pack. You play on the information gathered by the pack players. You take your best possible traits, you have snake kills, bait your teammates, try your best to be alive for the post-plant clutch to make sure that you are able to get those key traits, those key kills, those key snake kills. Typical example of this would be Palace on Mirage on an A exec, playing late from under, also on Mirage on an A exec, Ancient walking up ramp if the pack is going cave, etc., etc., etc. So BlameF is bait, trade, play late, get your kills, survive. Second type of lurk, something that is a bit harder to understand and a bit more tied to TMCS and to understanding macro, the AleksiB lurk, which main purpose is to lock a rotation / get a timing. You play at the same time into an area right next to or close to the same area as the pack. You will either encounter a rotation player and therefore you will fix him in that position and you will get information on him, making your pack attack easier. For instance, let's say on Inferno A site, you walk out of long at the same time that the short pop is happening. And then if the hopper or the rotation player is holding long and fighting you, killing you maybe even instantly, it means that the pack players don't have to deal with him on the bomb site, right? So that's a scenario where we are happy even if the person doing the AleksiB lurk just dies. You can think about a similar situation on Dust 2. If you go mid to B and your pack was coming tunnel, so you're doing some kind of 4-1 return in tunnel or 3-2 maybe, but usually you would do 4-1 or 3-1. Having your mid player go out mid, have city being smoked, go up the B slope, means that there is two options. Either the cities are in anti-mid setup, they destroy him, but we have the B bomb site. Either the cities are split, then he gets killed by some guy in an off angle, but it means there is only one on B, unless they did some kind of 3B setup, but that's like a specific situation. And if they're both on B, now the AleksiB lurk is getting a really good timing to help the pack split the bomb site. Right? So, you will either encounter him or you will not meet him and get a good timing on the city players defending the site. The good timing, it will allow you sneak kills or an early timing that will give a lot of information for the pack to play around. The AleksiB Lurk is especially relevant when you are winning out trades in a neutral area and you want to move forward. It's the best way to enforce a numbers advantage and guarantee it for the pack. AleksiB works best when the macro of the round is correct and if the round is not being fully read by the opponents. Because, like I said with the B situation, if you're walking into a stack with an AleksiB Lurk, usually you will still lose. It's not enough because let's say that third B player, they were two on site and one was B slope. He destroys my AleksiB Lurk, but then there's still two on B, so probably it's gonna be hard still, right? It also works better the less players exist on the server, as the if-then statements the AleksiB Lurk is making are much stronger in low number situation because, it's obvious that the least players there are on the server, the more information you get about one of them is information about all of them, right? So a typical example, like I said, walk out long on A short exec on Inferno, walk out long on the Stu when doing a short exec, walk out B slope when we're doing B2B, etc., etc. The third type of closed lurk will be Yekindar. Yekindar is a bit of a exclusively tied to Team CS role, a very sacrificial role, but very, very important for specific areas. Another way to call Yekinda would be the canary in the coal mine. His point is to get information on the cities and disrupt crossfires. So what do you do on Yekinda? You play right before, almost at the same time as the pack players, but almost at the same time. And where you play is much different than on the AleksiB Lurk. It's a more sacrificial approach, like I said, that ensures that the team will get information on the setup of the cities and potentially disrupt their established setup. The quote-unquote right before aspect is to let the pack be able to orient the form of their attack based on the information and the disrupted crossfire. It shouldn't be too early that the cities can easily switch to defending against the pack after the Lurk is dead. The Yekindar Lurk, he needs some utility to help him in his sacrifice. Okay, at least one flash is non-negotiable. Otherwise, you just can't do it. So this might be a bit harder for you to understand exactly what's the point of this Yekindar Lurk. And I will use examples to talk about it. The first example I want to give is the short pop on A Inferno. Historically, the abs guy on a short pop has had a few different roles, and in my opinion, doing Yekindar from abs on a short pop is by far the best way to use your abs lurk, and I will explain why. Historically, there were a few things. People have been doing blame F in apps, meaning that they are like playing slow, they are trying to get their trades, they are trying to swing out and get the best trade. But in my opinion, this is not great because of the micro of the area of apps, which is very, very awkward. And walking out of apps, there is a million angles looking at you. It's not a pleasant area to do blame F from. It's actually quite a bad area to do blame F from. Second big problem is that a lot of the times your short pop will just get simply deleted by a crossfire, pit side, by a million things that make it so that the short pop in itself is one of the hardest choke points to go through, one of the hardest finishers to do in terms of how easy it is for the cities to deny it. And if you're just intending on doing a blame F lurk on a short pop, you will probably just be useless in apps and do nothing, basically. Another role that people have used, which I think is better but not as good, is that people use the apps guy to support, and it throws any kind of like lineup flashes that would not blind the short players and that would blind the side CTs, and then you can go out on this. And I think this is okay, but usually it doesn't add as much strength as you would want for your short pop to actually become good. It is still pretty bad. It is still pretty low win rate to do this short pop if you are simply throwing some flashes from apps. However, if right before the short pop, let's say 2 seconds, 3 seconds before the short pop, we have a flash that goes above apps and my Yekindar Lurk jumps out. And when he jumps out, he first will see where the cities are and can call it to the short pack, which can then know exactly how to path into the bomb side and how to work their crosshair placement, how to clear, how to walk, how to space. And two, if it's a like pit, mini pit setup, pit side setup, anything where a city goes, on the right deep side of the wall, all of these setups, they have to shoot the guy that is flying out of apps. They have to activate their anti-flash setup that the guy that was anti-flash has to swing on the guy jumping out of apps. There is a necessity for the cities to react to the threat of the apps jumper, which means that they are much, much weaker to the short pop. You are basically allowing your team to do what they're supposed to do with your sacrifice, right? So we understand now the three types of lurks that I distinguish. BlameF, bait, trade, play late. AleksiB, you lock a rotation or you get a timing. Or Yekindar, the third one. Canary in the coal mine, you get info in the cities, you disrupt the crossfires. Now, I want to talk about which close lurk you should use when, in what situation. I gave a few examples, but you shouldn't just store them in your memory, but you should actively think about the situations because new maps come, new situations come. You need to have a thinking brain, okay? So, which type of close lurk should be played depends on the context. And majorly and mainly, and this is the key point, it depends of the relationship between these factors' quality. The quality. The first and major point is how easy or hard it will be for the pack to attack through the chosen choke point. So the quality of the pack attack through their choke point. How easy, how good, how comfortable, whatever you want, is it gonna be for the pack? For instance, fighting out of ramp on Mirage is pretty comfortable. And except the op ticket or the op triple, if the op is somehow not on A, most of the fights are very favorable and good to take for a variety of micro reasons that I'm not gonna delve into, but that has to do with how much you're walking into crossfires, how much you have to clear two angles at once, how much the angles you have to clear are like far away from each other, how much you can properly strafe, stuff like this, right? So uh, a place like Ramp Mirage is obviously quite comfortable, again, except against the op, like I said, but the crossfires are limited or denial of their contest with utility is strong. Okay, so in this situation, it would be way more interesting to have a BlameF lurk in palace rather than a Yekindar lurk. If while I am walking out of ramp comfortably, there is some guy that does Yekindar lurk out of palace and sees that the cities are, as we already basically knew, one ticket, one jungle, one stairs, whatever, it is fully useless. You did not disrupt anything, your information is not valuable, it doesn't do anything. And also, it doesn't help me trying to go out of RAM for you to suicide out of apps, right? I would much rather someone that baits a little bit their pack, the pack is coming out, they get some trades are happening, and then maybe now my palace guy can swing the city guy that got the last one of the last trades on the ramp pack, and this is very comfortable and something that you see happen a lot because it's a very good fight to take and very T-sided. So you can see here that the fact that for the pack it is pretty easy means that the lurk can do blame F. However, if you're attacking A side from short on Inferno like we saw, it's extremely hard, considering the size of the choke, the amount of angles the cities can take, all the setups, the potential crossfires, blah blah blah, the weakness of our own utility in that area. Then it is way, way, way more important to do a Yekindar lurk because otherwise my pack will just die. The other factors, also in terms of quality, are these three things. From the lurk choke point. So we had the first aspect that was from the pack choke point. Now we have from the lurk choke point. Where does the lurk actually come from? So from there you have one, the available traits, which is how easy it is to get good trades, good fights from the lurk. Okay, like I explained, for instance, Palace and Mirage is really good, and Apps is really bad. The crossfire disruption, how much you can actually disrupt the crossfire by aggressively exiting your choke point. And the third aspect would be information gathering. How much information you can have instantly coming out of that choke point and how crucial that information is to the pack's success. For instance, like I already explained, you will not learn much from where the cities are and it will not help a lot by jumping out of Palace, but a short hit coming out of apps can make or break the attack. Two side is very different from two pit for the pack to focus on. The micro of the pack attack is the primordial and governing factor of your decision. How easy it is for the pack to attack through the chosen choke point primarily determines what types of lurks should be played, and is heavily dependent on the map layout itself. So if it is a hard choke point to exit for the pack, Blame F lurks are very bad, and AleksiB or Yekindar lurks become good, depending on the specific micro of the areas. Which one between an AleksiB or a Yekindar also depends on the lurk choke point factors. The hardest the choke point is for the pack, the more the Yekindar style becomes relevant, and AleksiB is sort of a in-between between BlameF and Yekindar. Right? So the higher the chances are of the pack succeeding, the better BlameF becomes. The worse the chances are of the packs succeeding, the better Yekindar becomes. And as a general note, the more players are dead overall, the better AleksiB becomes. So, we saw all three types of lurks in direct spatial relation, which means they were close. There might be other ways to do it. I would be very happy to learn, but these to me are the three ways that I've seen and that I've understood, let's say, are as good ways for a solo player to operate in relation close to the pack. But now let's see the indirect spatial relation, so when the lurks are far. First, the types of lurks. What far lurks even exist? So when a lurk is doing any form of activity on the opposite slash remote location to the pack, its impact is going to be highly, highly, highly dependent on what timings he chooses to act on. And obviously, the way in which he chooses to act. The first type will be the apex lurk. On the apex lurk, you continue pressing an established threat. You fake, but from a position of strength. After taking a neutral area that can serve as a staging area to attack a bomb site, you maintain high pressure from this zone and you fake the continued pressure while the pack is going completely the other way. This pressure needs to happen at a timing where the pack can react on any information that the apex lurk will gather. Either a strong passive setups on the bomb sites he is lurking on, city reaggression, or empty space. He can direct the pack at the other side of the map. Apex Lurk is about applying pressure and being actually threatening, actually taking the area and maintaining control and development there by yourself. Therefore, you're creating space for the pack to capitalize on. It often requires a bunch of utility, sometimes dropped utility, and it often requires, or almost always requires, that the pack was there before. So a very good example of this is taking long on the stew. You keep applying pressure at a specific moment, as if the pack was trying to go forward, you smoke city, molo car, flash, whatever, while the pack is actually going B from T-spawn. This is a play that Vitality did a bunch of times. It's a bit out of meta at the moment, but it was pretty meta, let's say, a few months ago. On Nuke, going alone secret, continuing the pressure towards B, while the trio is going back to A through main, or through door, through lobby, is also a form of Apex Lurk. You are faking that your pack is secret. You have used a bunch of utility, you have used a lot of strength and a lot of resources, getting the Apex Lurk in his position, so that he will create space by his continued pressure that the pack can capitalize on somewhere else. So you could call it a fake in a way, but it is not really a fake because the fake that we can do is only because we have done real things before to get the lurk into this position, right? And we put him in a position to fake for the pack to do something later in the mid round. The second type is what I called the ROPS lurk. The ROPS lurk is probably the most complicated and the more open slash deep type of lurking that I'm gonna talk about, and that's mainly because of how variable the scenarios can be when you engage in that specific type of lurking, and it's for sure the most complex and the hardest in terms of macro decisions, and that's why, in my opinion, a very low number of players actually do ROPS lurks correctly. Probably only ROPS at the moment does ROPS lurks correctly. I'm obviously exaggerating, but you understand what I mean. For ROPS lurking, the point is to survive in an area to maintain information in that zone early, and you allow for reflanks inside the neutral zone. I will explain. You allow for mid-round redirections. You are counting utility. You are basically starting in a T-owned area, for instance, outside of tunnels on the stew, and on the left towards B, and you play it safely to end up in a late round situation, either to join the pack as a close lurk finisher, one of the three roles that we saw earlier, or you stay in a far lurk position to do a bunch of different things. And this is why it gets very complex and interesting and deep, is that you can lock rotations, you can play the post plan from there depending on what happened, you can reflank the cities. So I will explain quickly what I mean by reflanking. It's, in my opinion, a key concept in maintaining space in a powerful manner. After the pack has taken and used an area as a staging zone, a lurk coming from a connected but separate area, who survived and disguised his presence, can reflank the city flankers that retake that staging area the pack just left. Example, just two. My Rob's lurk is in tunnels, outside of tunnels. My pack is taking middle, and then they are going into a short exec. Okay, we faked mid to B, and then we go into a short exec. My Rob's lurk, who is in apps here, who is in tunnels, that's when now he has an enormous amount of decisions, not enormous, but more than in your average CS round, to make. He can stay in tunnels, do nothing, probably not great. He can leave fully, go long, and go out long on an interesting timer. He can try to walk out B. He can, like when the cities are rotating away, he can go down mid, try to lock rotations. He can simply join the short pack, etc., etc., etc. So the Rob's lurk is about not doing anything until not doing anything is a bit of an understatement. Not dying, so playing in a way where you will punish aggression if they come, or at least get information on that aggression. Also play in a way where you are able to maybe bleed some utility from them, count the utility that they're using. So when I say do nothing, I just mean you are not dying. Then arrive in this situation for the late round where you have all these options, right? The reflanking part is if the cities now, I chose the option that I will stay in tunnels and I want to reflank middle. What does reflanking middle means? If the cities know that it's some kind of short pop, like I said in our example, and they want to come and clear middle because they were like a lot middle and they don't have long control or whatever, okay? And the cities come and they clear middle with three, with the two B players and the A rotation. They come and they clear mid together from the doors, which is a very, I don't know, basic play. The cities have re-cleared middle to be able to retake A, right? The key here as a Rob's lurk would be that after they have re-cleared middle, that's when you would arrive middle and sandwich them on short when your team is on A. But obviously this doesn't do anything if they decided to not clear middle and to just go do normal retake from CT and long at the same time, etc., etc. So you can already see that I'm talking way more and in a more disorganized manner about this type of lurk because, like I said, it's the most complex, decision-heavy lurk. The Rob's lurking is about reading the round correctly to survive in your passive area, understand the macro of the round to potentially apply some pressure. For instance, like I said, a lurk smoke on a good timer, etc., etc. You can also not appear at all as a threat. You can just be completely silent and invisible. But then capitalizing on the space taken by the pack by getting sneak kills, locking area, securing the end round, or cutting rotations from the neutral area. So staying alive in the area also allows for the Rob's lurk to exist as a potential pivot for the mid rounds. That's also a possibility I didn't explain. Having at best understood the city setup and at minimum their spent utility, mostly smokes, will allow also a good, in this instance, for instance, a tunnels lurk, a B lurk, to allow to do a call for his IGL to come back that B is probably weak, B has no utility, etc., etc., is also part of the mission of this Rob's lurk. So as you can see, this is a very open and large and more complicated type of lurking, which could definitely be even more broken down into smaller categories, but it is so dynamic and based on understanding of the round and of all the variables and the little details that can happen in a CS round that I think it's better, for at least the purposes of this, to put it all under this umbrella of the ropes lurking, which is you are playing passive early, you are surviving early. Sometimes you can show presence, you don't have to, and then it allows you to capitalize on the space taken by the pack in usually the middle/neutral areas for you to activate in the late round based on your pack success/work. Typical examples of this: playing late from underground on Mirage. Typically, after the pack has taken and left middle, you can do a lot of things from there. The cities will retake middle for information and facilitate the A defense, but that's when the Rob's Lurk can activate to kill the unsuspecting con players in the back. And then if they are not middle, he can play the post plant himself from middle. For instance, you plant for con, but they don't even know that you still had a guy middle, and then it becomes very, very hard for them. And other example is all these scenarios I described about the 2B. The third type of far lurk would be Yabi. On Yabi, you contact out on one extremity when the pack is taking the other extremity, or on other specific activity of the pack. So you're banking off timings and gaps in the defense, trying to reorganize to the information on the other side of the map. You're catching anchors or rotators off guard in the middle of their movement. You're walking out on a bomb site thanks to timings created by the pack. You're trying to get snake kills, taking bomb sites without fighting for them. So the Yabi logs are also, just like the Rob's Lurk, capitalizing on the space taken by the pack, but on the other bomb site rather than towards a neutral area. It is in a way that is unconnected to the pack. Sometimes you will allow for redirection or late invisible lurks that end the round. For instance, one example of this that is done a lot, contacting out either monster or on the other side on A, on overpass, when the pack is attacking the other bomb site. For instance, what I said earlier, that would have been inside the Rob's Lurk switching to a Yabi Lurk, but walking out of B tunnels on those two when the cities are doing a mid retake. You're gambling that they're not watching and that something needs to be done. Right? So it's about thinking, okay, this bomb site is probably weak, probably no one is looking at me, I'm taking a timing. I'm walking in and trying to shoot someone in the back, trying to get an attention timing, a rotation timing, one of the two. Now for the usage of these different far lurk types, which far lurk, when, in what situation. So, while the types of close lurks to play were mostly and almost uniquely dependent on the pack ability to perform their attack, the far lurks, they are far more determined by the specific micro of the zone they operate in themselves and the macro objectives of the round. So therefore, we will examine what are the micro requirements of the areas to perform which lurks and what good macro reasons can exist. It's important to note that open situations like 3v3s, lower numbers, etc., will obviously muddy the waters of these clear delineations, and that many variable dynamics will interconnect the players when the numbers are low post trades. Right? So this is mostly about what you can still do when it's still 5v5, 5v4, 4v4, 4v5-ish. Okay? So when should you do an Apex lurk? 3 factors. First factor, credibility of the pressure. The Apex lurks are as strong as the belief they instill in the opponent that they are not facing 1, but 3, 4, or 5 players. This means the pressure needs to be believable. therefore it should be able to look like it could be multiple players. This is why Apex Lurk works best operating from a second step, a staging area, such as long on the stew, car on Inferno. Indeed, when doing pressure from long, you are not faking a side take, which is usually quite easily readable for the defense because they can see that no one is out, as most of the Ts will always commit on a side take. And utility with no player commitment screams fake, 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 right? Any player that has 2 brain cells, if he sees a bunch of flashes, but then nothing is happening, he's not dead, no one is shooting at him, he will say it's fake, it's fake, it's fake, okay? You are faking on the Apex Lurk a continuation of a map control, but one that applies a ton of pressure on the cities. It's the same as retaking banana and car to be able to go A on Inferno. It needs to look the same in terms of noise, utility, timings, as it would look if the whole pack was there. This is usually much harder or even slightly impossible to do on side takes, but it's very feasible for the staging area stakes. Car on Inferno, short long on the stew, con short on Mirage, etc. Obviously here conditioning takes place here as well. The pressure has to be realistic, and the shape of the previous rounds can help produce the illusion of your current round. The more realistic solo pressure can be, the stronger the Apex Lurks become. Second factor, how hard it is to retake the zone for the cities. Apex Lurks can only happen if the zone is dangerous for the cities to retake information in. This is again why long on the stew is the Apex Lurk prime example. Retaking long from the T's as a city is generally a very bad idea, right? It takes time, a lot of manpower. In most macro situations, it's a bad idea regardless, because if the T's are all long, the cities will most likely lose the retake, considering the micro of the zone and how easy it is for the T's to hold that. And if it's only an Apex Lurk, the pack can simply react towards B, because he is alone, and then this is a lose-lose situations for the cities in most cases. So the harder and the more manpower intensive a retake of the zone is for the cities, the stronger Apex Lurks become also. Now the third factor is how the macro timings of the map, the specific map, work. Because obviously pressure is always time bound. It's in time, it's at a specific time. Starting a fake pressure is akin to starting a timer, a countdown, like you're pressing on your little watch, during which the pack has to act or the jig will be up and it will become extremely clear to the cities what is going on, and that pressure will be fruitless, useless. So doing the Apex Lurk on the correct timing is how you make it strong. Now for the Rups Lurk, and now we will get a little bit into complicated things again, but there are, in my opinion, 4 major factors. First one is the ability to punish city aggression and to hold space in the first stages of the round. So the big weakness of a Rups Lurk is the ability for the cities to group up and clear him on a timing where the pack cannot react. If my pack is taking middle and is having a lot of protocols, for instance on the stew, and as a reaction the cities push tunnels and they kill my B-Lurk, my Rups Lurk player, my pack being in middle spotted is now in a very shitty situation because we have lost all space, we are surrounded, we are in a bad situation. We have no, the map becomes extremely tiny instantly, right? So the quality in terms of off angles and passive positioning of an area is a big factor in the ability to perform a Rups Lurk. For instance, B tunnels on the stew, it's an excellent Rups Lurk position because it has a plethora of angles, passive and stealthy positions, ways to retreat when they're putting too much power in for the Lurk to sustain this attack. maintaining a large area of the map by yourself is key when doing ROPS lurking, as keeping map control and, more importantly, not dying allows for its late round activities to be enabled. Second factor, connections to the staging areas. The ability to transition from a passive space maintaining role to a reflanking / rotation cutting possibility is key in the ability of doing ROPS lurks. Again, B tunnels on those two, to take that example multiple times, is directly connected to middle and short via lower. And a ROPS lurk that was maintaining tunnels can operate as a reflank for short or an efficient post plant. Again, the fact that it's connected makes it very useful. Let's say, for instance, if he was on the opposite in Palace on Mirage, good luck doing ROPS lurking from there. You are not connected to anything. You cannot do anything, right? So the connections to the staging areas that the pack will work on and that you can capitalize off the space that's been taken. 3. The likelihood of the pack success and the quality of the post plant. So just as with close lurks, the ROPS lurk is dependent on the likelihood of the pack's attack to succeed. Being able to evaluate those odds and transitioning from a ROPS lurk to either join the pack or to do blame F, AleksiB, or Yakinda. So transitioning from a far lurk to a close lurk, if it seems unlikely the pack will succeed, is a very important skill set. You can only play end round situations if such situations arise. If the whole pack dies entering the site, you will most likely end up saving, right? However, if based on information and overall macro of the round, you judge the pack will succeed its attack, but might struggle in the post plant instead, for instance because we are 3v4, then doing a ROPS lurk is optimal, as it can skyrocket the odds of winning the late round. It's about evaluating, again, your timing, your choice, your decision making, based on the likelihood of pack success and the quality of the post plant. The fourth factor, and this is a bit harder, but it's the player quality. The player's ability of reading the macro needs of the positions. Like I already said, doing ROPS lurks correctly is probably one of the hardest T-side roles in terms of decision making, because it implies a constant updating on the round situation and the consequent decisions that need to be taken swiftly. What is required of a player in a ROPS lurk position during the round can widely vary depending on a large number of factors that would be way too complex to enumerate. Like stated above, it can range from disappearing completely from the enemy POV to switching gears towards doing Apex lurks or sometimes doing Yabi lurks. The full ROPS lurking as an action in the round, it implies this ability to switch gears because of its end round timer objective. ROPS lurking is a tremendous end round win rate boost, but it can also be an absolute early or mid-round disaster if done improperly. The third category of far lurks, Yabi, and when you should use them. The first factor would be a low quality macro situation. Let me explain what I mean. In general, a T simply walking into an area owned by the cities should lose this fight. Right? There are crossfires, off angles, setups, whatever. If you are simply walking in from a choke point to a bomb site and there isn't a good macro reason for you to do it, you will most of the time just die, unless they are bad, but then nothing matters, right? So this is why the Yabi lurk is in general a bad idea. However, in certain situations and in certain maps, it can be justified. A good example of this is overpass T side, where the central area is not directly connected to a bomb side, and the T's in general have low chance of winning the round. On this map, on good macro timers, for instance, off the pack contact on the other extremity of the map, Yabi Lurks, out of monster, or walking out long A, can be powerful and turn around the situation. If you manage to play some real 50-50s, which are in general better odds than your overall odds on T-side overpass at round start, the same can be said walking out on any bomb side on any map. If the round is looking dire, for instance, after a big mid retake on Mirage just to ensure where our team is dying in middle, being a threat in the area is also sometimes necessary to not let cities be too comfortable. Again, mostly on city-sided maps. This is why it can make sense for a lobby lurk on nuke to simply pick HUD by himself at the beginning of the round. It's a risk-reward ratio that is worth it in the long run. However, Yabi lurks remain weak in a fundamental sense, as they lack trade capacity, they lack utility support, they are weak to so many things. It's in general a Hail Mary, a gamble, a joker into a round that looked poor otherwise. There are many ways that players can lose focus, patience, discipline on their bomb site, and Yabi lurks exploit these timings and weaknesses. It's heavily exploitative, meaning it will only work up to a certain point, or it will not work against elite opposition, but yet sometimes it can be an efficient playstyle. The other factor, after the low quality macro situation, is the high quality of the walkout micro, I don't know. How hard it is to simply walk out on the bomb site from the choke point in terms of angles, ability to hold you, the number and wideness of different angles you need to be aware of and to clear, the ability to path on the site without having to be fully exposed to everything at the same time. For instance, walking out of monster on overpass is, if they cannot be on the right side, or, if you don't think they're on the right side, if you ignore the right side, walking out on overpass is way more comfortable in terms of angle management, crosshair placement, clearing positions if you're walking out of monster than it is to walk out of short on the exact same bomb site where they can be on both sides, in front of you, everywhere. Where in monster, where you're in tunnel, okay, the smoke is clearing, they're not right side, I'm gonna walk out. You just have kind of a 50-50 with the barrels guy, 50-50 maybe with the close wood guy, etc., etc. So, as a conclusion, as a summary after this long YAP session, there are 3 types of lurking activity to participate in a finish as a lurker. 1. You bait and you get kills. Blame F. 2. You go towards the space where rotation would be to either fix him or get timing on a site. AleksiB. You go out to spot and disrupt the setup. Yakindar. And then there are 3 ways to act as a far lurk in the mid to late round, not directly participating in the finish. You fake pressure and solo taking staging areas, which is Apex. Hold space passively, then activate in end round situations, which is ROPS. And walk out on timings on bomb sites, which is Yabi. All these types of activities and which one you should choose will almost always first come down to the various facts about the pack, its position, its targeted attack, its general health, shape, power. And your choices will also heavily depend on the specific micro of the areas you are lurking in.